Hi everyone, I think it's time that I address the issue around this system monitoring integration with Home Assistant and do the transfer of data to Home Assistant properly. It is all done thanks to you. I get a few suggestions how it should be done, so I've done my research and hopefully I can do it, or at least I'm doing it in a proper way now. So the thing is, what I was saying in the past, in the previous video, is that I don't think I should really be pushing all these values through MQTT. How I can, how to transfer the data from Node-RED to Home Assistant, but I should really be using one of the Home Assistant nodes. And you see all the nodes that get automatically installed when you add the Node-RED to Home Assistant. So these are all the Home Assistant specific nodes. And while the one that I should have been using is the entity node. So as it says, it creates an entity in Home Assistant which can be manipulated from this node. So I already started doing some of the changes here. You can see that I've created one node. Actually, I've created two already because I'm playing around with this because I still think that some of it is not really, working. Well, I should say it's not that intuitive as I thought previously. So when I look at the Home Assistant documentation, then how an entity looks like, how you can customize your entities. You have all these different configuration variables. So this is what I try to do, and I try to create my first entity. So as you can see here, I've obviously given it a name. Oh, by the way, I found very little information on this entity node. So everyone is using the events node and the core services node, but there's hardly anything how to use the entity node. So I've been trying various options to do that. So first I specify the name, which has nothing to do how it appears in Home Assistant. So it is just a name in Node-RED. So obviously it talks to your Home Assistant server, and so that gets set up automatically when you do Node-RED. You define what type of sensor it is, so it creates these type of sensors. So that's going to be a sensor. And the state of the sensor or the actual value is going to be coming from the message.payload. And then you can specify this Home Assistant config optional, which is like, why is it optional? Okay, you don't have to specify it. But this is where it got a little bit confusing, because then it talks about, configuration values. And it says, okay, Home Assistant config. So I thought these are the same. But then in the documentation, it says friendly name. It says name here. So I thought this name is the entity name. So I started putting the sensor dot something. And then later on I find out that that's actually the friendly name, so they should have been using friendly name here. Okay, then your device class is the device class, so again that matches. Icon matches, unit of measure also matches, so that's why I'm saying it's not that intuitive. And then it also has this section on attribute key and value. And this is what I wanted to use in order to set the entity ID, because the way it works at the moment, or the way it seems to be working, is that it will automatically generate the entity ID based on the name. But in some cases, I want to give it a different name. So like I say CPU 1 minute load, because I think that sounds probably more properly English, but the way I would name the sensor or the entity is I would say raspberry. So I can so this is like a grouping, and then CPU load, and then CPU load as let's say another level of the entity, and then 1 minute at the end. But this attribute key doesn't seem to be the the configuration variables. I have no idea what this attribute key is. It's not documented anywhere that I could find. So no matter what I pass here as the entity ID, it's not getting considered. So the only option I have is that I go into the entities in Node-RED, in Home Assistant, and I rename them manually, which is yeah. Anyway, but it does create the entities, and then I can just use them in, let's say, in the dashboard. So what I'm planning to do now is actually that's going to be a very boring part of the video, is just to rename these, replace these MQTT nodes with entity nodes. And just before I get to that part, I want to talk about how you get this entity node started. So if you put the entity node on your Node.js flow and you look at the documentation, it says you need to have this this integration installed. And if you open this page, then it says, you scroll down here, it shows all the things you need to do. So you have to create a, well, first of all, you have to use an editor, and I'm using this file editor. And please don't ask me how I enable this, but I think it's probably one of the integration I installed in Supervisor. Oh yeah, I installed the Supervisor file editor and I enable this to show in sidebar. So this is my file editor, and as it says, this is where I have my configuration YAML, and I had to create a new folder. So if I browse the file system, now I can see that I have a new folder which is called custom components, and then in that I have one which is Node.js, and it has a bunch of files in it, because it says here that you need to create a custom components, and within that you have to create Node.js, and in that you have to download everything which is in here in the custom components / Node.js. And also don't forget there is a translation folder. So there is like, what is it, 10 files plus 2 more files here. And I basically just use this upload functionality to upload the files one by one. Maybe there is a better way of doing this, but it wasn't such a big, it wasn't a big issue. So you do that, you upload, you restart your Home Assistant, and which you can do configuration and server controls, and then restart here. And then in configuration and integration, you can add the integration, and you add the Node.js integration. Where is it? It's here. So once you have done that, you can use the entity nodes, and then once you deploy the flow with the new entity nodes, you can see all your entities here. And you can see that, for example, the one that I've created, the 1 minute CPU load, this is where I renamed the entity. So by default, the entity ID gets determined as sensor dot, and then the rest of the entity ID gets derived from the name. Obviously, it's lowercase and the spaces get replaced by underscore. And that's what I have done here, and I just renamed them here. So raspberry, underscore CPU underscore load underscore 5 minute. So of course you only need to do it once, but I would have preferred it to do it from the Node.js side, but that's not working for some reason. So that's all it takes to install the integration, and now we can just carry on and So now we can carry on and just create copies of these and replace them. And so the way it appears to be working, that once you place the entity node, then the node itself is going to create the entity, and that's going to this instance of the node is going to refer to that entity. So of course, if you want to change anything, you can just come here and change, let's say, the name or the icon or unit of measure or anything. Well, probably not the entity ID. This doesn't seem to be working, so I might as well just remove this from here. I've done it for the 5 minute load and it doesn't seem to make a difference, so yeah, whatever. So it would be nice if that would be working. Probably it's working, but I just couldn't figure out how. So yeah, I'm just going to do the rest of it. So I need a 15-minute one and the sensor. And by the way, I determined this icon. So I go into the material design icons and I look for gauge. Yeah, there is a couple of one. And then you can see I picked this one and it says MDI-gauge. And you use it like MDI : and gauge. So that's the format it expects. And also, thanks to one of my thanks to one of my viewers, I got a recommendation that if I want Home Assistant to consider these load values as numbers, so show them as a graph in the history, I should provide a unit of measure of space. So as you can see, there is a space here. And by the way, I can turn off this debug information because I needed that to figure out why the entity ID is not working, but I couldn't. So I can now delete these MQTT nodes and just use the entity nodes instead. And when you deploy it, it's going to show you that the new entity got registered and it shows the time. So that's cool. So just carry on. So that's going to be Raspberry uptime. Maybe I use capital U. Oh, what is it? U. Oh, thanks AliExpress. Okay, and uptime. Ooh, what's going to be the gauge? I don't know. Time. What do we have to time? Oh, yeah, I'm going to use this one. Time lapse works for me. And that's going to be minutes. I hope that's going to be accepted. Okay. So I can do this and then remove that and move over there. And that's going to be memory usage. That's probably going to be, or should be, some sort of gauge as well. But I don't think we have anything on usage. Yeah, not really. Oh, sausage. Usage? No, nothing. And we don't have so many gauges. So what is like half hearts? Probably not this one. Music notes, not this one. No. I'm probably just going to leave it. If I can't find anything more meaningful, then yeah, whatever. I'm just going to leave the icon for these. Okay. So that's the memory usage, and I think that's going to be in, oh, that's in percentage. Is it in percentage? Memory usage. I think I do have it here as well. No, number 2. That's a chart. I think this is kilobytes, to be honest. Kilo KB, I think. Is it correct? So now I can remove this and then use the memory usage and then total memory. And so it's going to be like this, and free memory. I think I do have probably a few more for the SD card. Yeah. Oh, that's definitely in kilobytes. Maybe. Anyway, I can change the unit of measure later as well. So that's not a problem. And actually, that's going to be the, well, in my case, it's going to be the SD card. So I think I'm just going to call it SD card capacity. And that's definitely in kilobytes. And SD card used. My 3D printer just finished printing and I can hear the PLA peeling off from the build plate. Probably it doesn't come through the microphone. So SD card available. And SD card. Well, so this is how full the SD card is in percent. So I think that's going to be it. That's all it takes to actually pass values. And as far as I understand, it obviously creates these entities, and whenever the update comes through, it's going to just update the entities. Let me see if I left everything out. Oh, the CPU temperature. CPU. And I think I'm just not going to update the entity IDs right now. So this is going to be just C centigrade. Okay, that's it. I think we have all of them covered. So if I deploy now, you can see all of them got registered. And if I go back to configuration and entities, oh no, it's better if I go integration and then node.red and the 12 entities, then I can see here. And as you can see, these have been renamed. All the others are just, well, as it is at the moment. Uptime. So that's the default icon as it seems. So probably later on I can go back. And if I look at my system dashboard, then it looks a little bit weird because I just probably use different names. So, you know, the older IDs or entity IDs no longer refer to anything. So I can just quickly go and basically change 1 minute. And let's put the unit. Oh, and I've also given these severity as well. I don't think it's, you know, that's what it's supposed to be. And now if I click on this, I'm getting a graph instead of getting those weird history values. So this is why, because I have the percentage. So 5 minute load. Okay, the name comes through already from the name, and I think I'm just going to leave it as it is. I'm not going to add severity. So that's going to be the 15-minute load, and the unit is space. And that's going to be again the 1 minute load with a history. Gauge, name, unit, optional, more, showed last 1 hour. Really? I would have thought it's... yeah, I don't know. I think you can do something here to show more stuff. Like, I'm pretty sure I have more data than that. Or maybe I don't because I just created this entity. Okay, and I can edit and I can put the uptime back here. Raspberry Pi sensor uptime. This is something else. I think it's that. Okay, this been running for some time now. And I'm going to do capacity SD card and then used and available. And of course, if I change the entity IDs, then I need to do all this from the beginning. And I name this as percentage, SD card percentage, that's it. And that's percentage already. So save. And that's the server ping time, which I'm going to address a little bit later. So I think that's it. It wasn't too bad. Actually, it was easy to do. And of course, setting up this integration didn't take more than probably 10 minutes for me. So that wasn't really bad either. But now I have it up and running again. And if I click here, it shows me a proper history. Yeah. So I see values instead of that, you know, stupid graph. Probably the same here. Well, okay, this is fairly new. How come I have so much history? April the 6th. Anyway, I think I do have some history because then probably some of it still came from the MQTT, and probably this was the period when I deleted the MQTT sensor and I recreated one from node.red. But then because it was the same entity ID, the data got merged together from, you know, previous historical data. And the SD card percentage is going up. So it was definitely 25% and now it's 27%. So as I said, I really need to keep an eye on it. So I think that was pretty much it. I hope you didn't miss anything because To be honest, I'm focusing too much on my screen. I'm not focusing on what recording, so my head could be blocking something from the, the either corner of the screen, although I didn't use the debug. That's where my head is going to be in the way. But I'm testing this new stuff. I'm testing the, the green screen, which is behind me. I'm also trying to sync the audio with the video. I think it's probably going to be still off. I can't really figure out why the video is delayed that much. Or I can't really figure out if the video is delayed by a certain amount every time, or it seems to be slower or quicker, depending on, I don't know what session I'm running, or maybe the computer is busy or something like that. But anyway, that's probably the main topic of this video. Maybe it's a plus to have my head up here. Where is it? Yeah, here. It's not too much distraction. It's just a different content. But I think we got what we wanted running. The OS integration is now working. I have for me, a better integration between Node-RED and Home Assistant. And actually, and just to make sure that we have done what we wanted, what I can do is I can disable the MQTT and stop it, and hopefully nothing is going to be broken. Well, I know that nothing is going to be broken because I just deleted all my MQTT nodes from Node-RED, and probably there is nothing else on that. So if I work on anything new, well, for example, if I finalize this internet connectivity flow, I will also use the entity nodes to push the values through. Okay, so I'm still publishing the pings to MQTT, which is obviously it's now not doing anything because I just stopped the broker, but that's fine. I'm going to fix this in the next installment. But I'm quite happy that it's working right now. If I can figure out how to push the the entity ID from here, I will make the changes to all these nodes. But I think that's going to be good enough for now. Thanks for watching, and hopefully see you in the next video.